On Earth there is a great variety of climatic conditions, which have led all life forms to adapt to any environment, creating spectacular ecosystems in all corners of the globe. Mantids have also spread and diversified in a surprising way in much of the land. On this trip we will discover the wonders of the ecosystems of our world with particular attention to the mantids that inhabit it. Let's start with the driest and most difficult areas to consider home, the desert areas. Desert areas are areas of the world dominated by extreme conditions such as high temperature range, aridity and above all lack of rain. In these territories the prolonged stay of the high atmospheric pressure, and the presence of particular currents or reliefs prevents the formation of rain clouds, making the lands arid and inhospitable for many forms of life. A real desert is defined as an arid place where no more than 15 centimeters of rain fall in a year. They extend to the mid-latitudes of the two hemispheres and can be of different nature, but they are mainly sandy, where most of the land is occupied by more or less high sand dunes, or rocky, which offer greater opportunities for shelter for animals. The soil of these places is almost totally exposed to the sun and heats up very quickly, so much so that it can even reach 70 degrees centigrade. However, this heat is quickly released during the night, where temperatures can also be very low. The vegetation of the deserts is very scarce, composed only of highly specialized plants to use every possible source of water and to store it inside them. Their large but not deep root system absorbs water from the surrounding area and prevents the growth of other plants. Surface watercourses do not exist, except where surface basins are created, the so-called oases, fed by underground sources. Oases create green areas where various animals, including humans, that cross the desert can hydrate or find food. The fauna of hot deserts is not as varied as that of other ecosystems. Due to the scarcity of plants, food chains are few and do not include many species. The invertebrates adapted to live in the sand are few. Most of them concentrate at the base of the rare plants and find refuge in the debris beneath them. Thanks to these small animals, which are mainly insects, larger animals such as birds and reptiles manage to survive, which in turn are consumed by the few predators at the vertical of the food web. Large mammals are few and are mostly herbivores, as succulents are the only sources of water in many areas. Small animals cannot venture out in search of food in the central hours of the day due to the extreme heat, but they must have a shelter at their disposal where they can stay at an acceptable temperature for their body. Many desert species are therefore active mainly at night and in the first hours of light. Some insect reptiles are also able to obtain water from the humid currents that run through the desert in the early hours of the day, to have the necessary hydration to overcome the suffocating heat. Animals that die from the heat are quickly consumed by the few scavenger insects, such as desert ants. Contrary to what one might think, mantids also populate deserts and have adapted surprisingly. The continent where they have spread most is Africa. Here are the Amyafla. These are not just a few exceptions, but dozens and dozens of species that have adapted to live in the desert. The Amyafla are the largest group, widespread mainly in Africa and the Middle East. Mantids of this genus are very different from the species we are used to knowing. They are insects with a squat and flat shape, with long legs that allow them to run very quickly, and with a color identical to that of the sand that allows them to blend in perfectly. The head is very large with long antennae and strong mandibles, and the hind wings are often brightly colored and serve to scare off predators. The Amyafla feed mainly on other small terrestrial insects of the desert, and in turn are the prey of many other larger animals such as birds and reptiles. Their life cycle is also perfectly adapted to life in the desert. The females dig holes in the abdomen where they lay their eggs, which will not be exposed in this way to extreme heat. Hemiaflu are not the only mantids that colonize deserts. Also in Africa, for example, we have the holaptilan, while in Australia very similar species live in the rocky deserts of the country, constituting an important link in the food chain of this very particular ecosystem. Mantids, as we have seen, are widespread and important also for real deserts, where they represent predators capable of keeping smaller animals under control, but also prey to support the insectivores that settle in this environment. The most biologically productive desert areas are, however, semi-deserts, in any case desert places, where however more than 15 centimeters of rain fall in a year. Thanks to these precipitations, the vegetation is much richer and includes not only herbs, but also woody species, shrub species and especially succulent plants, which conserve water inside them and protect themselves with leaves with long and pointed thorns. All this vegetation allows the development of many more forms of life. Insects abound and so are reptiles, birds and mammals. In these desert areas, ephemeral species also develop, especially plants, which develop and grow immediately after the rain, and then die immediately after having reproduced and restarting the cycle as soon as it rains again. The semi-deserts are widespread above all on the edges of totally desert areas, and here too the temperature range is very high. As for the mantises, they live mainly in warm semi-deserts, where the temperature never drops to too low levels. In these places, widespread above all in Africa, America and Australia, many species of mantises can live, taking advantage of the greater availability of prey compared to real deserts. Mantises of the genus Stagmomantis, such as this female of Stagmomantis carolina, are insects adapted to life in the semi-desert. They are medium-sized species, with females that are 6 or 7 centimeters long and with short wings, and males with much longer but smaller wings. These mantises live in most of the American continent and are abundant in almost all warm semi-deserts, where they represent an important link in the food chains. They are excellent predators of grasshoppers and other herbivorous insects, which they capture with their powerful raptor legs. They are very aggressive mantises and are able to capture even small vertebrates such as lizards. But they are also prey to many other animals, in particular small mammals and insectivorous birds, which consider Stagmomantis excellent prey also for raising offspring, much better than other more dangerous arthropods such as scorpions. Even the Blepharopsis mendica, a species widespread especially in Africa, is a mantis perfectly adapted to the semi-desert. Its shape and its colors make it very similar to a thorny plant and make it invisible among the shrubs in which it lives, where it feeds mostly on flying insects. There are many mantises that live in the desert areas, and although they are not the environment where they have diversified the most, the mantises of the desert remain fascinating examples of the wonderful biodiversity of our planet. Today the desert areas are threatened by many human activities, such as the extraction of oil, the exploitation of underground sources that feed the oases, but also the excessive grazing in some semi-desert territories that destroy the vegetation. These harmful practices, together with climate change, lead to desertification, that is the expansion of deserts and the destruction of neighboring ecosystems. Man-made deserts do not support biodiversity and therefore lead to ecological disasters and the extinction of many animal species. But much still needs to be done to protect these evocative and vibrant places.